Most people live their lives skating on the surface of things, believing that what they see immediately in front of them is all that matters, as if appearances alone are sufficient to guide a human being through the complexities of existence. But that's not how reality works, because the most meaningful truths are rarely obvious. They're hidden, often buried so deeply that they require tremendous effort and sacrifice to uncover. Think of an iceberg, where the visible part is only a fraction of its true form, while the vast structure lies unseen beneath the waves. Human life operates in the same way. What you present to the world is superficial, but the essence of who you are, the struggles you conceal, the potential you haven't developed, those exist beneath the surface. That's where meaning is found, not in the quick pleasures or shallow distractions that fill the day. If you remain on the surface, you never discover who you could truly become. Depth requires courage, because when you start digging, you don't know what you'll find, and you may be terrified by it. Yet without confronting what lies beneath, you remain half-formed, a shadow of your possible self, unable to withstand the storms of life. The notion of 360 feet below is a metaphor, a reminder that the most powerful realities are concealed far beneath what is visible to the naked eye, waiting for those willing to make the descent. Imagine what it takes to go down that far: the preparation, the patience, the strength to withstand the pressure, and the willingness to encounter something unknown in the darkness. This is precisely what life demands of you, that you voluntarily journey downward into the places you fear, where uncertainty reigns and where danger lurks, because hidden there is also the treasure you need. Every great story tells this same tale: the hero descending into the abyss, facing the monster, and returning transformed with wisdom or power. That myth is not fiction, it is a psychological reality, because human development requires the same path. You can't become who you ought to be by staying where it's safe. To find the truth, you must go down, deeper than comfort allows, deeper than fear permits, and deeper than you imagined was even possible. The surface is filled with distractions, with pleasures that pass, with the endless chatter of social media, entertainment, and cheap dopamine that keeps you floating comfortably where no effort is required. But meaning does not dwell there. Meaning resides in the depths, where your conscience confronts you, where your failures weigh heavily, where your vulnerabilities and limitations cry out for acknowledgement. That is the soil in which transformation takes root. The ancients knew this, that the underworld was where heroes ventured, not to seek destruction, but to retrieve what was hidden, to bring forth something of value into the light of day. And this principle is just as relevant today. If you want to live a life that matters, you must look beneath the easy answers, beneath the excuses, beneath the superficial lies you tell yourself to avoid responsibility. The truth is uncomfortable, and that's why it hides so well. Only those willing to endure discomfort, pain, and even despair will ever bring it to the surface. To dig below is to confront chaos, because order exists only on the surface, where routines and predictability give the illusion of stability. Chaos waits below, unpredictable, overwhelming, and yet filled with creative possibility. When you face it voluntarily, when you willingly look beneath appearances, you encounter your own weaknesses and the harshness of existence. But you also encounter strength, resilience, and the potential to transcend suffering. Think of the seed buried in the ground. It must descend into darkness, decay, and pressure before it breaks open and rises toward the sun. Human beings are the same. We must descend into the difficult, into the buried truths of our past, into the reality of our mortality, in order to rise transformed. Without that descent, we remain untested, fragile, easily broken by the first true trial life presents. To ignore the depths is to remain shallow, and shallowness leads inevitably to despair. The modern world constantly tempts us to remain shallow, to scroll endlessly,
to seek validation in likes and comments, to pursue pleasure without sacrifice, to mistake comfort for happiness.
And yet, at the core of our being, we know this isn't enough, because late at night, when silence surrounds us, the questions return. Who am I? What am I doing? What am I avoiding? Those questions demand depth, because their answers don't exist on the surface.
They live 360 feet below, in the realm of the unconscious, in the parts of our psyche we refuse to confront, in the responsibilities we neglect. To face them is terrifying, because it means admitting failure, weakness, and the need to change. But it is precisely in that confrontation that we find strength. To avoid them is to stagnate, to rot slowly, while pretending everything is fine, and no human soul can survive long on such lies. Every culture has myths about hidden treasure, buried gold, guarded by dragons in caves or monsters beneath the sea. These are not arbitrary tales. They are archetypes, reflections of human psychology that tell us something profound. What you need most is guarded by what you fear most. And if you refuse to descend, you never claim the treasure. If you remain on the surface, you may stay comfortable, but you will never live fully, because the fullness of life lies in the risk of descent. That is why truth feels heavy, why it burns when spoken, why it shakes you when discovered. It is not surface-level information. It is depth pressing against your soul, demanding recognition, demanding transformation. To ignore it is to betray yourself, but to confront it is to grow into something far greater than you imagined. This is why depth matters more than comfort, because comfort fades but transformation endures. The descent also has a moral dimension, because the truth beneath the surface is not just about personal growth, but about confronting your shadow, the darker parts of your nature that you would rather ignore. Every human being has impulses, resentments, and desires they wish didn't exist, and the temptation is to repress them, to pretend they aren't there, to maintain a clean surface. But the repressed doesn't vanish, it festers, it grows in the dark, and it emerges in destructive ways if not confronted. To dig below is to look directly at that shadow, to acknowledge it, to integrate it, so that you can harness its energy rather than be destroyed by it. Jung understood this, that wholeness requires facing the darkness within. And when you do, you gain strength, not because you are perfect, but because you are real, capable of bearing responsibility, capable of acting with integrity. The surface cannot provide that, only the depths can. The truth that lies beneath is also relational, because what is buried within you affects those around you. If you refuse to confront your own depths, you project your shadow onto others, you blame, you resent, you destroy relationships, because you cannot see yourself clearly. But if you dig down, if you face your fears and failures, you emerge more honest, more humble, more capable of genuine connection. This is why marriages, friendships, and families crumble when people avoid the truth, because lies are surface, level, and they collapse under the weight of time. But honesty, though painful, creates depth in relationships, and depth creates resilience. Just as a building needs a deep foundation to stand, so do human beings. If your foundation is shallow, you fall. If it is deep, you endure. And that depth is truth, hidden below, waiting for you to uncover it and make it part of your life. The unknown has always been the place that both terrifies us and calls to us, because it is the territory beyond what we already understand, the place where we have no map and no guarantee of safety. But it is also the birthplace of every great discovery, every innovation, every transformation that has shaped humanity. When you stay in the realm of the known, you remain comfortable, but you also remain limited, confined by the boundaries of what you already are. The unknown is chaos, yes, but it is also potential, because within chaos there exists the possibility of something entirely new. Think of the first explorers who crossed oceans, not knowing what lay beyond the horizon. It was danger, but it was also discovery. The same principle applies psychologically.
If you want to grow, you must step into places that make you uneasy, uncertain, and afraid, because that's where the treasures are hidden, guarded by fear, waiting for those courageous enough to claim them. The known keeps you safe, but the unknown grants you power. The fear of the unknown is universal, because chaos means the possibility of failure, of loss, of humiliation, of being torn apart by forces larger than you. And so people retreat into what is familiar, what feels controllable, what provides the illusion of security. But that illusion is fragile, because life itself is unpredictable, and no amount of clinging to the known will protect you from tragedy, illness, or the inevitability of change. The unknown is coming, whether you choose to confront it or not, and avoidance only makes you weaker when it arrives. The alternative is to step toward it voluntarily, to move into uncertainty with eyes open, to say, "I will confront chaos before it confronts me." That act of courage transforms fear into opportunity, because it changes the unknown from a threat into a field of possibility. The dragon that devours you when you hide becomes the dragon that guards treasure when you advance. This shift is psychological alchemy, turning terror into strength. Consider the mythological hero's journey, a pattern found in every culture where the protagonist leaves the safety of home, ventures into an unfamiliar world, encounters monsters, and emerges transformed. That is not just a story, it is a blueprint for human existence, because every time you move into the unknown, you undergo that process. You leave what is comfortable, you face challenges that test your limits, and in overcoming them, you grow. Without the unknown, there is no hero, no transformation, no story worth telling. Life would stagnate into repetition, safety without meaning, order without vitality. The unknown is terrifying precisely because it is the place where you might fail, but it is also the only place you might succeed in a way that truly matters. When people look back on their lives, the moments that stand out are not when they clung to the known, but when they risked stepping into something unfamiliar and emerged stronger for it. The power lies not in what you already know, but in what you dare to face. Human beings are wired to explore, to push boundaries, to move beyond what is familiar. And when we suppress this instinct, we suffer. Anxiety, depression, and despair often stem from a refusal to confront the unknown, from staying trapped in patterns that no longer serve us. Life shrinks when you stay too long in the comfort zone because meaning requires challenge, and challenge requires risk. The unknown calls you to expand, to stretch beyond what you thought possible, to encounter aspects of yourself you didn't even know existed. And yes, you may fail. In fact, you almost certainly will fail at times. But every failure within the unknown is also information, a step toward wisdom, a lesson that equips you for greater challenges ahead. The known offers safety, but it also offers stagnation. The unknown offers risk, but it also offers transformation. You must decide which you value more, safety that suffocates or chaos that creates. When nations or individuals confront the unknown, they discover power that reshapes history. Scientific breakthroughs, artistic revolutions, and acts of courage all emerged from someone daring to step into the unfamiliar. India's hidden secret that shook America was powerful precisely because it resided in the unknown, concealed from view, a force waiting to be revealed. In the same way, the parts of yourself you have not yet explored hold immense potential, capable of shaking the world around you if only you dare to uncover them. The unknown within you is not empty. It is filled with dormant abilities, untapped creativity, strength you have not tested. To awaken it, you must journey inward, into the dark places where you fear to tread, because that is where possibility resides. The greatest danger is not that the unknown will destroy you, but that you will never venture into it, and therefore never become what you could have been. The relationship between order and chaos defines the human condition,
because order is the known, the structure, the predictable, while chaos is the unknown, the infinite possibility that surrounds us. You cannot live entirely in order, because it becomes rigid, lifeless, sterile. You cannot live entirely in chaos, because it is overwhelming, destructive, paralyzing. The challenge is to walk the line between them, to use order as a foundation while venturing into chaos to retrieve new potential. This is why Peterson emphasizes the balance of yin and yang, the dance between stability and adventure. Too much order and you suffocate, too much chaos and you disintegrate, but the balance, stepping deliberately into the unknown while grounded in responsibility, is where life is most meaningful. That balance is where power is found, because it allows you to expand without losing yourself, to explore without collapsing, to transform without chaos consuming you. Children embody this principle naturally, because play is their way of venturing into the unknown, experimenting, testing boundaries, learning through trial and error. They are not afraid to fall, to stumble, to explore something unfamiliar, because they know instinctively that growth requires risk. Adults, however, often lose this capacity, becoming rigid, cautious, fearful, trapped by routines and responsibilities that leave little room for adventure. But that spirit of exploration does not vanish. It waits, buried beneath layers of fear and habit, calling you to reawaken it. To live fully is to recover that willingness to play with the unknown, to treat life as an exploration rather than a prison. Power emerges when you rediscover the courage to experiment, to create, to step beyond certainty, and in doing so, you not only expand your own potential, but also inspire others to do the same. The unknown is contagious. One act of courage can ripple outward, transforming entire communities. The unknown is also spiritual, because it is the place where meaning itself emerges. Every encounter with the unknown is a confrontation with something transcendent, something larger than yourself, something that demands humility and awe. It humbles you by showing the limits of your knowledge, but it also uplifts you by offering possibilities beyond what you imagined. This is why religious traditions often frame the unknown as divine, as the voice of God, as the mystery from which creation itself arises. Whether or not you hold religious belief, the psychological truth remains. The unknown is the wellspring of renewal, the source of creativity, the foundation of transformation. To deny it is to deny life itself, to turn away from the very process that allows growth. To embrace it is to align yourself with something far greater than individual comfort, something that shapes not just your destiny, but the destiny of the world around you. Human beings are burdened by potential, because within us lies more than we can see, more than we can measure, more than we can possibly bring forth in a single lifetime. But potential is useless unless it is actualized, and the bridge between potential and reality is responsibility. Without responsibility, potential remains hidden, locked away beneath fear, laziness, or denial. You might know deep down that you are capable of greatness, but if you refuse to bear the weight of responsibility, that greatness never emerges. It is not enough to dream or to imagine. You must carry something heavy, something meaningful, something that demands more of you than you think you can give. That is when hidden strength reveals itself, because responsibility forces you to grow. People are not inspired by comfort. They are inspired by those who shoulder responsibility willingly, even when it is crushing. That's when potential turns into power. Responsibility is terrifying because it eliminates excuses, because it requires you to say, "If things fall apart, I will take the blame." It is much easier to live in resentment, to point at the unfairness of life, to blame others for your failures. That path requires no courage, no sacrifice, no growth. It is the path of weakness disguised as self-protection. But that refusal to carry responsibility leaves you bitter, fragile, and incapable of withstanding the inevitable suffering of life. Responsibility demands that you voluntarily confront suffering, that you pick up your cross and walk toward the unknown anyway. And in doing so, something miraculous happens. You discover that you are far stronger than you believed. The act of taking responsibility awakens capacities that would have otherwise remained dormant, like muscles that only grow under strain. Without that strain, your potential lies buried, unseen, untouched. With it, you begin to uncover who you could be. Think of the student who avoids responsibility, who refuses to study, who blames the system, the teacher, the circumstances for failure. That student's potential remains locked away, wasted in excuses. Contrast this with the student who takes responsibility, who studies relentlessly, who admits shortcomings, who strives to do better regardless of obstacles. That student transforms potential into skill, into competence, into mastery. The same principle applies everywhere, in families, in careers, in nations. When leaders take responsibility, civilizations thrive. When they avoid it, civilizations collapse. Responsibility is the foundation of growth because it forces us to engage with reality, to act as though our choices matter, to face the fact that we shape our destiny through what we are willing to endure. Without responsibility, we remain children, waiting for someone else to fix the chaos. With it, we become adults, capable of confronting the world and reshaping it. The weight of responsibility is not arbitrary. It is precisely what gives life meaning. People search endlessly for happiness, chasing pleasure, status, or comfort. But these are shallow substitutes for meaning. And meaning is always found in responsibility, in caring for a child, in supporting a partner, in building something worthwhile, in standing up for truth despite the cost. Meaning is heavy, and that is why it sustains you. Happiness evaporates in the face of suffering, but meaning endures, because responsibility gives you a reason to continue even when life is unbearable. The heaviest load you can carry is also the most redemptive, because it transforms suffering into strength. Without responsibility, life becomes trivial, empty, unbearable in its pointlessness. With it, even suffering becomes purposeful, a crucible that forges character. That is why those who shirk responsibility live in despair, while those who embrace it find resilience. Meaning arises only when you carry the weight willingly. Responsibility also transforms fear, because when you carry something meaningful, you stop being consumed by trivial anxieties. Fear shrinks in proportion to the weight of what you bear. A person who knows they must provide for their children cannot indulge endlessly in fear of failure, because their duty overrides hesitation. A soldier carrying the responsibility of defending comrades cannot collapse into cowardice without betraying what he values most. Responsibility calls you to be greater than your fears, to act despite them, to stand up when you want to kneel down. And the strange paradox is that by accepting responsibility, you become freer, not less free. Because freedom without responsibility is chaos, aimless wandering that leaves you weak. But freedom bound to responsibility is strength, the ability to choose actions that matter, to build a future worth inhabiting, to transcend fear by facing it head on. Responsibility reshapes fear into courage. Hidden potential is like a treasure chest buried beneath layers of avoidance, procrastination, and denial, and responsibility is the shovel that uncovers it. You do not know who you could be until you are tested by responsibility, until something depends on you and failure carries real consequences. It is in those moments when people are counting on you, when the stakes are high, when the weight feels unbearable, that your dormant capacities emerge. Think of parents who discover depths of patience, endurance, and love they never imagined, simply because the responsibility of raising a child demanded it. Think of leaders who rise to the occasion in times of crisis, revealing strength that remained invisible until responsibility forced it forward.
You cannot predict your hidden potential in advance. You must summon it by carrying something heavy enough to demand its emergence. That is how greatness is born, not from comfort, but from responsibility that feels impossible until it is carried. Responsibility is not merely personal. It is collective, because societies rise and fall on the willingness of individuals to carry their share of the burden. When people reject responsibility, blaming others, demanding entitlement, refusing to contribute, societies fracture and collapse under the weight of irresponsibility. But when individuals accept responsibility, even for things beyond themselves, societies thrive. Every great movement in history has been driven by individuals who said, "I will bear the weight, even when I don't have to, even when others refuse." That willingness to carry responsibility creates ripples that transform families, communities, and nations. It is the antidote to nihilism and chaos, the force that binds people together in shared meaning. If you want to change the world, begin by shouldering responsibility for your own life, and then extend it outward. Because responsibility scales. It begins with you, and it expands to everything you touch. Avoiding responsibility always seems attractive in the short term, because it promises ease, comfort, and the relief of not having to carry the load. But that avoidance extracts a price that grows heavier over time, because unfulfilled potential turns into regret, bitterness, and despair. People who refuse responsibility often end up crushed by the very weight they thought they were escaping, because life punishes avoidance with weakness. Strength is built through strain, avoidance builds fragility, and when inevitable suffering arrives, those who avoided responsibility collapse under it, unable to withstand the pressure. By contrast, those who carried responsibility willingly develop resilience, the inner fortitude to endure hardship without breaking. Responsibility is not just about duty, it is training for survival, a preparation for the storms of life. You pay either way, with the effort of carrying responsibility now, or with the unbearable weight of regret later. The choice is unavoidable. The path of responsibility is difficult, but it is also noble, because it transforms ordinary people into heroes. To carry the heaviest load you can bear is to align yourself with the greatest good you can imagine, to act in service of something beyond yourself, to live a life that matters. Responsibility unlocks hidden potential, not because it makes life easier, but because it makes life worth the struggle. When you choose responsibility, you choose growth over comfort, meaning over triviality, courage over fear. And in that choice, you discover strength that astonishes you, capacities that would have remained forever hidden if you had chosen ease instead. Responsibility is not the enemy of freedom, nor the burden that crushes. It is the catalyst that awakens the deepest parts of your being. When individuals confront the depths of their own being, they undergo a transformation that is not merely personal, but reverberates outward into the world. The act of facing the darkest parts of yourself, the fears you avoid, the truths you deny, creates a ripple effect that alters everything around you. Most people underestimate how much influence they have, believing their struggles are insignificant, but this is a lie. The smallest act of confronting chaos, telling the truth when it's easier to lie, standing firm when it's easier to collapse, creates a chain reaction. Others see it, they are inspired by it, and suddenly a single courageous act changes the atmosphere of an entire room. That is how revolutions begin, not through grand gestures alone, but through individuals confronting their depths. When you refuse to face yourself, you remain weak, fragile, easily swayed by the world's chaos. But when you descend into your own depths and emerge stronger, you become a force others cannot ignore. The depths you confront are not abstract, they are the places within you where fear, resentment, and despair reside, the places you least want to explore. They might take the form of trauma you haven't acknowledged, responsibility you've avoided, or potential you've refused to develop. These are not just personal issues. They are forces that shape how you treat others, how you influence society, how you contribute to the future. To confront them is painful because it means admitting that you are not who you should be, that you have failed in ways that matter. But in acknowledging that, you create the possibility of change, and change is contagious. One person who rises from the depths with renewed strength becomes an example of what is possible. The world does not need perfect people. It needs people willing to struggle with their own chaos and return with wisdom. That act alone reshapes families, communities, even nations. History is filled with examples of individuals who confronted their depths, and in doing so, altered the world. Think of leaders who faced personal demons before leading movements, artists who endured immense suffering before creating works that inspired generations, scientists who battled failure before uncovering truths that revolutionized knowledge. Their confrontation with the depths was not optional, it was necessary, because only by enduring that descent could they bring forth something of value. This is why myths describe heroes descending into the underworld, because transformation always requires a journey into darkness. And what is discovered there is never just for the hero, it is for the community, for the civilization, for humanity itself. When you bring order out of your own chaos, you don't just heal yourself. You provide a model for others, a beacon in a world desperate for light. That is why confronting your depths is both a personal duty and a societal obligation. The depths also reveal to you the true scale of your potential, because you cannot know how strong you are until you face the forces that threaten to break you. People want strength without struggle, wisdom without suffering, power without sacrifice, but that is not how reality works. The only way to discover your strength is to stand against what terrifies you, to carry what you believe will crush you, to endure what you thought was unbearable. And in doing so, you realize you are far more capable than you imagined. This realization is transformative because it changes not just your perception of yourself, but your relationship with the world. If you can endure your own depths, you can endure chaos outside you. And when others see that resilience, they find courage to face their own struggles. That is how the world changes, one individual at a time, finding strength in the depths and bringing it to the surface. Avoidance is seductive because ignoring the depths feels easier than confronting them, at least at first. People distract themselves with shallow pleasures, with endless entertainment, with the illusion that if they don't look into the abyss won't look back. But avoidance only makes the depths darker, more terrifying, more destructive when they eventually surface. The shadow you ignore becomes the tyrant that rules you unconsciously, shaping your choices without your consent. Confronting the depths is painful, but it is the only way to transform what threatens you into what strengthens you. That is why honesty is so crucial. It forces you to stop running, to look directly at the chaos within, to admit what you'd rather deny. Truth is the light that illuminates the depths, not to destroy you but to guide you through them. And when you emerge, you are no longer a slave to what you feared. You are free, and freedom radiates outward. The confrontation with depths is not only psychological, but also moral, because it requires you to face the question of good and evil within yourself. Every human being carries both, the capacity for compassion and cruelty, for creation and destruction. To deny that darker capacity is to remain naive, vulnerable, easily manipulated by forces you don't understand. But to confront it, to acknowledge that you are capable of terrible things, is to integrate it, to harness it, to ensure that it serves rather than dominates you. Jung called this process integrating the shadow, and it is essential for maturity.
A person who has confronted their darkness is not harmless. They are dangerous, but disciplined, capable of defending what is good with strength. And the world desperately needs such people, because chaos is not defeated by weakness, but by those strong enough to confront it voluntarily. That moral courage changes everything, because it reshapes both the individual and society. Confronting depths also reorders your priorities, because it forces you to ask, what truly matters, what is worth suffering for, what is worth carrying. When you descend into the chaos of your own being, trivial desires fall away, replaced by a sense of purpose anchored in reality. You realize that life is too short for pettiness, too fragile for avoidance, too sacred for lies. What emerges is clarity, the ability to distinguish what is meaningful from what is meaningless. And with that clarity, you become capable of guiding not only yourself, but others who are lost in confusion. Leadership is born from that kind of clarity, because people follow those who have faced their depths and returned with vision. They trust them, because they see in them someone who has endured chaos and emerged intact. That trust becomes power, not the corrupting kind, but the transformative kind, the power to shape the future through truth and responsibility. The world is full of chaos, disorder, corruption, and suffering, and it is easy to believe that nothing you do can make a difference. But that belief is false, because every time you confront your own depths, you push back against that chaos in a way that resonates far beyond you. The personal is political, the internal is external, the micro shapes the macro. A single act of courage, a single confrontation with truth, a single refusal to surrender to despair can alter the trajectory of countless lives. You may never see the full impact, but it exists because courage multiplies. The depth you confront today becomes the strength that someone else borrows tomorrow, and that chain of influence builds over time. That is how nations change, not through abstract ideals alone, but through individuals who embody courage in their daily struggles. Confront the depths, and the world shifts around you. The process never ends because the depths are infinite, layered, constantly presenting new challenges, new fears, new truths to uncover. But this is not a curse. It is the essence of human existence. Life is not about reaching a state of perfect comfort or safety. It is about continual growth, continual confrontation, continual transformation. Each descent prepares you for the next. Each struggle equips you for greater challenges. Each truth uncovered reveals new layers of potential. The world does not need people who have avoided the depths. It needs people who have gone down, faced the chaos, and come back wiser, stronger, more resilient. And every time you do, you contribute to something larger than yourself, something that reshapes the collective consciousness. The depths are terrifying, yes, but they are also sacred, because they are the place where transformation begins, and where the power to change the world is born.